So, can you believe that we're a month and a half away from the release of the 1950 US Census on April 1st? Now, I don't know about you, but I am super excited because this is the first census that my parents appear in. So, I will definitely be looking for them on day one. Now, if you're anything like me, you're probably wondering what will actually happen on day one. So in this video, I'll share with you what I've been able to find out. Plus, I'll show you the census form and the questions that were asked, noting some of the interesting things as we go. So hey there, I'm Julie Cahill-Tarr with Genealogy in Action, and I simplify advanced genealogy research concepts so you can chase down your elusive ancestors quickly and confidently. So if you're a dedicated genealogist looking to level up your research skills, you're in the right place. Now in this video, I'm going to talk about what is expected on April 1st regarding access to the 1950 US Census. And we'll also take a look at the census form and some of the new questions and features. And stay tuned until the end where I'll explain why you'll want to do some preparation work before the census is released so that you can be ready to go on day one for those people you want to find right away. Okay, so day one, the National Archives and Records Administration, or NARA for short, will release the 1950 census on a dedicated website. Using artificial intelligence and optical character recognition technology, we'll be able to search for names. However, the technology is not perfect. Instead of the OCR on typewritten text like we're used to, which also isn't perfect, the AI OCR will be evaluating handwritten text. So the index names will most likely be a little wonky. Now, regardless, you'll be able to browse the images manually, just like we did back in 2012 with the 1940 census. Now, Family Search and Ancestry are partnering to generate an index using Ancestry's proprietary handwriting recognition technology. And the index will include every field. Now, from what I understand, I don't believe the index will be published, meaning available and searchable until the data has been reviewed. But both Family Search and Ancestry will start uploading images to the respective websites on day one, at which point you can browse the images manually. Now, getting the index created using the handwriting recognition technology and getting it reviewed will take time, although Family Search hopes that having the initial index generated by OCR technology will reduce the time for a complete index, since volunteers will only be dedicated to reviewing, not transcribing. So for context, the 1940 census took about 6 months for Family Search to index, with volunteers starting from scratch. I assume other genealogy websites like MyHeritage and Find My Past and such will also start uploading images to their websites on day one, but I do not have any details from any of them. All right, so let's turn to the census form and the questions that are asked. So this first sheet that I'm showing you is the main sheet that you'll see. It is referred to as P1, Form P1, and for 1950 Census of Population and Housing. And there is actually a backside to this, which I'll show you briefly. It's actually pretty cool because there's a lot of different information here about like the characteristics of the actual dwelling, things such as like the style of the structure type, the condition of the unit, the type of toilet, the kitchen sink, like it includes everything and the kitchen sink apparently, cooking fuel used most often, and other questions that would be incredibly great to have the answers to. It would really enhance our ancestors' story. However, this sheet or this side of the sheet was actually not filmed, and they are no longer extant, meaning they are no longer available to us. Now, the statistical data is available, however, it will not be for your individual people. So kind of a bummer, unfortunately, but just know that it was taken. All right, so back to the main thing that we're most going to be working with. So you'll notice here, I'm going to zoom in here. We've got like the typical things at the very top, the location, the state, the county, the town, things like that. And the sheet number will be over here. Very similar to what we've seen in past censuses. And then we start getting into the questions. And you'll notice up here, there's kind of this top level row that has for head of household, for all persons, and for persons 14 years of age and over. So these questions are for this header, these questions are for this one, and these are for this. So just be aware of that. And we're going to zoom in a little bit more, and we're going to kind of just focus on these two pieces right here, the head of household questions and the all persons questions, because they're basically the same types of questions we've seen in previous censuses. So the name of the street, the house or apartment number, the serial number of the dwelling unit. I will be providing a link in the description of this video for you to access the enumerator's reference manual, and that will explain how this number was to be assigned. It is kind of similar to the numbers we've seen, the household numbers we've seen in previous censuses, but it is a little different. So you'll want to become familiar with that so you can understand how that number is assigned. And then we have is this house on a farm or ranch? Yes or no? If no, is it on 3 or more acres? So it's kind of a slightly different question than we're used to. Then the agriculture questionnaire number. If I understand correctly, the agricultural schedule is no longer available, so this number won't do us any good. Then we have the name. So the name of the head of house, head of this household, and then the names of all other persons who lived here. And right here, it even gives that they are supposed to list it in this particular order. So be sure to pay attention to that. And then we get into relationship to the head of household. So they're either the head, the wife, daughter, grandson, mother-in-law, etc. They give examples here. Race is to be denoted using these codes, so to speak. Sex, male or female, pretty self-explanatory there. How old was he on his last birthday? And if under 1 year of age, enter the month of birth as April, May, December. And then, is he now married, widowed, divorced, separated, or never married? And then there are kind of these abbreviations that will be used. What state or foreign country was he born in? And there's a note here that if born outside the continental United States, under the name of the territory, possession, or foreign country. And they also want the enumerator to distinguish between the French Canadians and the non-French Canadians. And then finally, if foreign born, is he naturalized? And the instructions right here say yes, no, or AP for born abroad of American parents. All right. And one other thing I want to note too, in this where born column, if it was a foreign country, they were supposed to enter it based on the present day boundaries. So just be aware of that. All right, so we go over here and we look at this portion here. I'll pull it up a little more. And this is for persons 14 years of age and over. So we've seen similar questions to these related to if working, the type of work, things like that. some of these types of questions here, like did they work last week? Are they looking for work? Those are similar questions in the 1940 census that we saw. And then of course we have like the occupation and industry that we've seen on previous censuses as well. And then this class of worker, I believe we saw this in the 1940 census or a similar thing here. And it's appearing here again. So this is all kind of work related. And you can see here, there's some instructions up here as well. So just pay attention to all the little notes and make sure that you look at these so you know that like WK is for work, H is for housekeeping, OT is for other, and then U is for unable to work. So just be aware of that. And again, refer to the enumerator's reference manual to understand exactly how the questions were to be asked and how they were supposed to be recorded, how the answers were supposed to be recorded. All right. So we're going to kind of come back over here. I'll zoom out just a little bit here. And you'll notice that we have these little boxes and circles around certain numbers, and it says sample line. Now there are 5 different sets of or sheets. Okay, so this one happens to be 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, and 30. Another one is 4, 9, 14, 19, etc. 1, 6, 5. So it's every 5. It starts with one of these 5 numbers and then does every 5 all the way down the page. And those get entered down here in these sample or supplemental questions. So we saw supplemental questions introduced on the 1940 census, where there were 2 people on a sheet that got these extra questions. Well, this time it's 6 people. But one of the things I want to point out real quick before we go into those is this right here. So right after number 30, it has a little checkbox that if checked, it means that the household is continued on the next sheet. I absolutely love this because I know I am guilty, and I'm sure if you're watching, you have also been guilty of getting to the end of the page and not going to the next page to see if the household continued, especially if you get to the end of the list and there happens to be the last child that you're aware of. Maybe that next page had another child that you didn't know about. Maybe they died in infancy. That's why you didn't know about them. It might have a parent living with them, an in-law living with them, cousins, nieces, nephews, whomever, hired hands, maids, whatever. And you just miss them because we didn't go to the next page, right? Totally guilty. I'm sure we've all done this at least once. So this is pretty cool. And then there's also this section for notes. So in one instance, I read that like if the family was away and they weren't going to be available to answer the questions, and like a neighbor answered the questions, they would make a note of that here. So while you won't get an indication of who the informant was, in some cases, if they happen to be, if the data happened to come from someone else, it will actually be noted here among some other things. So again, the reference manual, very handy tool to understand what else you might find. So we're going to get, I'm going to zoom out here just a teeny bit here. So now we're going to get into these supplemental questions. And this is for the people who are on those lines. So we saw those like squared and circle numbers, and you'll see them repeated here as the circles. And again, we're broken down into a section for all ages and then for persons 14 years of age and over. So let's zoom in and look at this first batch here for all ages. So we have was he living in the same house a year ago, living on a farm a year ago, living in the same county a year ago. So in 1940, you'll remember that we had a question for everyone that asked basically if they lived in the same place, same house or same place in 1935. Okay, this one's just a year ago. So April 18, or 18, April 1949, basically is what they're asking. And they're just simple yes, no check boxes. Now, if the answer to 23, which was in the same county, is no, then they want to know what county and state he was living in. So you'll see here that we have a box for county, one for state and foreign country. Now, it says, if county unknown, enter name of place or nearest place. So what's nice about this is it's actually broken into two pieces. So if they were in DuPage County, Illinois, they would put DuPage here, Illinois here. If they didn't know they were in DuPage County, for example, Aurora is a town that is actually in 4 different counties, including DuPage County. It's primarily in Kane County, though. But let's say that they didn't know, they would put Aurora here and Illinois here in the state. So this is kind of cool. And I almost wonder if we won't see data maybe a little bit more filled out. So they knew the county and they also included the town. That'd be kind of cool if they did. I guess we'll just have to wait and see, right? Again, if it's the same as up there on the birth question, but if it is a foreign country, they are asked to record it based on the present day boundaries. And if it's not known, like if they don't know what the country is today, for example, and I mean today as in April 1st, 1950, they are to record the former name or another locality, but they are to leave 24A, so the county or nearest place, blank. So I think it'll be interesting to see if the county and or towns are filled in for those who resided outside the US. So I don't know if they will. It's going to depend. We see enumerators do a lot of different things sometimes, and so it's quite possible that they will add this information, which is a benefit to us. All right, and then we have what country were his father and mother born. Again, if it's foreign born, we're there to use the present day boundaries. And then we have what is the highest grade of school that has been attended, not completed, attended. And then there's codes below. So right down here is a list of codes that they're supposed to put in this column. And we did see this question or a similar question on the 1940 census. It was asked for everyone. In this case, it's just for these 6 people. And then the next column is, did he finish this grade? So that's where the completed comes in, and it's either yes or no. And then the final question in this for all ages is, has he attended school at any time since February 1st? And it's either yes or no for those under 30. And if it's for 30 years old and over, they're just supposed to mark the 30 or over box. They're not even supposed to ask the question to them, which if that were a question today, might not be a good idea because there's a lot of people over 30 who are going back to school for a variety of reasons. So probably not an appropriate way to answer it in today's world. But remember, this was 72 years ago. So, all right. Moving on to this next batch, it's for persons 14 years of age and over. And in this case, we kind of get back to some of these work-related questions. And so how many weeks has he been looking for work? So if they were looking for work on item 17 above that we've already covered, they want to know how many weeks has he been looking for work? And then last year, in how many weeks did this person do any work at all, not counting working around the house? And this is the calendar year of 1940, so not within the past 365 days. It's last year, the entirety of 1949. Same with these questions here. These are all related to income. This first batch is income received by this person, so whoever's on this line, in 1949. In this batch of questions, it's related to income. If this person here on line 5 is a head of household, then they're also asked about the income received by his relatives in this household. So these 3 sets of questions are the same with the exception of who the person is that they are asking the question about. So they're asking about employee wages or salary, how much he earned in his own business, professional practice, or farm, and then income derived from interest, dividends, veterans allowances, pensions, rent, or other income aside from earnings. Same questions over here, it's just from the relatives. And there are more instructions with details in the enumerator's reference manual. And then finally, we have, unfortunately, if male, ask each question. That was, did he ever serve in the U.S. Armed Forces during World War II, World War I, any other time, including present service? Again, it'll be interesting to see what happens with this set of questions, especially related to World War II, because there were plenty of women for sure who served in World War II. So I'll be interested to see if enumerators marked these or not. It's unfortunate that it's if male, and the instructions even say to ask males 14 years of age and older. So that's kind of sad to see, unfortunately, but it was the reality, right? But maybe make it lucky and it may indicate something. So if you have a female who is on one of these lines and she is enumerated and or pretty sure that she did serve in, let's say, World War II, and it is not marked, it's because it wasn't supposed to be. All right, and we're not quite done yet. So let me just zoom out here real quick. So this last person, this number 6, whether it's number 6, oh boy, I don't do math very well, but whatever that number happens to be, in this case, it's 30. But whoever the 6th person is, they answer all these questions, and then they have this bottom set of questions down here. So let me zoom back in and look at these questions. So we have, if worked last year, 1 or more weeks in item 30, which is this one right here. Is there any entry in items 20A, B, or C? So those are the ones at the top that everybody answered. And if it's yes, they skip down to this question 36 here. If no, they are to make entries in the questions 35A, B, and C. And they're similar to the ones that we saw earlier, the kind of work he did, but in his last job, keyword there, last job. B is what kind of business or industry did he work in? It's again regarding the last job, and same for the class of worker. And again, that was, the P was private employer, G government, O other, and NP for no pay. Then we have these final 3 questions. If ever married, so meaning they were married, widowed, divorced, or separated in item 12, which everyone answered above. Has this person been married more than once? Yes or no? And if married, widowed, divorced, or separated, how many years since this person last married, was widowed, divorced, or separated? And they're to enter the number of years or mark if it's less than 1 year. So this is actually kind of an interesting question. We've seen similar questions related to the marriage, like how long they've been married or when they were, number of years since they've been married or whatever. Like there were 2 different versions of it in like 1910, 20, 30, somewhere around in those years. Maybe 1900, I don't remember specifically, sorry. But I don't recall ever seeing these 3, if they were widowed, divorced, or separated, and how many years has passed since then. So that's very interesting. And then finally, if female, now here's the kicker, and ever married, meaning they were married, widowed, divorced, or separated in item 12. How many children has she ever born, not counting stillbirths? And they either put the number of children or none. Now, this is unfortunate because we know that in 1950 or 1949 or previous to that, people, women were giving birth to children out of wedlock. It was a reality. It had been going on for, a long time. So this is not a new thing. So it's really a shame that this question stipulates and married or ever married. So it'll be interesting to see how that question's answered too. Because if she was a single mom and it's pretty obvious that she had 3 kids and that she's got listed in her household, I wonder if the enumerator will just ask the question and put 3 children. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But another interesting aspect of this too is if the person asked if like adopted children or stepchildren counted, they were not. The enumerator was not to include those. So this question for this whole one person on this sheet, assuming they were a female, could be kind of telling in situations of adoption or questions of parentage. Was it the first wife, the second wife, the third wife, whatever. So this could actually be an interesting question. It's a shame that it wasn't asked for all females on the sheet and just the one. So that's kind of a bummer, but we'll just have to wait and see how that plays out. So that is your introduction to the 1950 census form. All right, so let's switch gears and talk about prepping for the 1950 census release. Now, I've been hearing lately that people aren't going to take the time to prep because NARA will have an index on day 1. But as I mentioned earlier, it will not be perfect. So here are my thoughts around prepping. First, I believe that we should seek out the 1950 census for the people in our tree. Why? Because censuses are one of those foundational sources, and quite honestly, it's another set of data points for our research. So that said, at a minimum, you'll probably want to generate a list of people who would likely be in the 1950 census, so you can systematically go through the list and find people in the census, whether you use an index or browse the images manually. Now, second, because the NARA index will not be perfect on day 1 or even day 30, and we're not sure when the index will be ready on Family Search or Ancestry, I want to have a backup plan that will allow me to browse the census easily. So I will be looking up enumeration districts for the known locations and addresses around 1950 for the people on my list. Now, before you say, Julie, that's a lot of work, let me just say that I will only be doing that for people in my direct line and their immediate families. I will also do this for instances where the 1950 census might help answer a specific research question that I'm working on. And in both cases, these are the people I want to find immediately, and I am not relying solely on the new technology to help me find them. Now, I'll be creating an kind of like over-the-shoulder video that will show you my prep process, so be sure to catch that video when it's available. So what can you do right now to prep for the 1950 release? Well, I'll be sharing with you how I will generate a list of people and find enumeration districts so I'm ready to go on day 1. So you may want to hold up on that until you watch that video. But in the meantime, there are a few nuances about the census that you might want to explore further. The first has to do with the enumeration of people who didn't have a permanent address or were temporarily away from home. Second is understanding the process that happened when no one was home on the first visit and how they were recorded in the census. And if you have Native American roots, you'll want to learn about the additional information collected for individuals living on Indian reservations. Now, I provided some links in the description to 3 resources related to those topics. And you might also want to take a look at the enumerator's reference manual to get a really good understanding of how the census was to be conducted. For example, things like who was not enumerated, as well as all of the detailed instructions for all of the census forms and questions, such as how the dwelling numbers were assigned for question number 3, or how income was recorded in the supplemental questions 31 and 32. And I have provided a link to those as well. So I hope you enjoyed this video and that you're excited about the release of the 1950 US Census. And let me know in the comments who the first person is that you'll be looking for on day 1. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to subscribe using the button below and click the little bell so you'll be notified when new videos are released.